Hello, Chattanooga. You're listening to all new Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. Clutch with Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today, making me just a small part of your day. You know that I appreciate each and every one of you. And the Super Bowl is done. That does not mean that football is done. The national title game is a month old at this point. That does not mean that football is done. Football never sleeps. You know what I mean? So I have some football stories for you, some SEC stories specifically. We have 4 Vols who have been invited to the NFL Draft Combine. I'm a nerd. I will be watching the NFL Draft Combine, so I'll let you know how those guys did when we have that in what April when we have it? March or April, one of those days. And then we have the pro days and stuff. And then we have some transfer news. Jacob Eason officially transfers from Georgia. I'll talk to you about that in just a second. But let's start with basketball, because once we've got the major football games behind us, it's basketball time, right? It's been basketball season for a long time, but we didn't really have time to pay attention to it because we had so much of that delicious football to talk about, which is football is such a snackable sport. And by that, I mean, it's just, you can talk about it in bites, man. Like it's so easy to discuss. It's easy to plan a show around. We've got all of that stuff, but basketball, especially college hoops, March Madness, it's right around the corner. March Madness is my favorite sporting time of the year, hands down, right? And there's a lot of great ones, right? We just had the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl's not my favorite, but the Super Bowl's great. And we've been blessed, by the way, with some fantastic Super Bowls in the last decade or so. It's been a good 10-year run of really great games. I don't know if you've noticed. We've only had maybe 1 or 2 duds in there, but mostly, overwhelmingly, we have had great games. The 2 best teams in the league is what it usually feels like we wind up watching. And that's not always the case. So we have that. What we end up having also is a team in Tennessee, right? College hoops. Because the Vols last year, I think they missed the NCAA tournament. They were close. They were on the bubble. And they had a really good run at the end of the year. They were really close. They just didn't get in. And they have built on it. Rick Barnes, year 3 for the Vols. Now, I'm a Texas Longhorn fan. Rick Barnes was the coach of my basketball team before he was the coach of your basketball team. And I told you were going to like Rick Barnes. And this year, it's all coming to fruition. And Tennessee already underway against Kentucky tonight. But I have some audio from the SEC teleconference that was yesterday. I have some audio from that of the 2 coaches talking about each other and talking about their teams. Because Tennessee at this point has risen to 15th in the AP polls after stomping out Ole Miss last week, 94-61. They also beat Kentucky a week ago. And both of these teams are fighting for second place in the SEC. And I'm not going to lie. If you had told me a year ago, Kentucky and Tennessee play for second place in the SEC and Tennessee's got the edge, I'm not sure I would have believed you. But Kentucky's had their struggles. And Kentucky's on a downswing, and Tennessee's kind of on an upswing here. Kentucky's ranked 24th in the nation, and I actually think that Kentucky is primed to start putting this stuff together. This is the time of year when they start to sort themselves out. Because they're young. They're always young, right? And Sean Calipari has said, this is a pretty young team for him. This is what he said.
Before Missouri, I said, do me a favor. Play for your teammates. I want you to think about how can I make this game easier for my teammates? And it's hard for them right now. So we got to force some things to get them to play with each other. And I'm trying to bring it along, but it's a different process because this is the youngest team that I've even ever coached. And it's become that challenge. But look, this team is capable of doing it. I believe in this team. It's just I got to do a better job, and then they got to fight more. So it's a combination of both.
It's a combination of both. This is the youngest team that I've even ever coached. Mercy, John Calipari, king of the one and done, and this is the youngest team that even he's ever coached. Yeah, you're going to have your problems with a team like that. You're going to have your hiccups, obviously. Kevin Knox is a talented player. And by the way, not just Kevin Knox, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Hamidou Diallo, and PJ Washington. All of those guys are averaging double figures for the Wildcats. That's a team that, if they do get themselves sorted, do fundamentally wind up having all of the pieces to potentially be an absolutely scary unit, right? They just need to make the right adjustments. And they actually play very similar styles of basketball in a certain way. Like, Rick Barnes was actually saying this, that he thinks that he and John Calipari think alike because they both stress defense, right? They both like offensive firepower, but they both think that things start on the defensive side of the ball. Well, I'll let Rick tell you.
Yeah, Rick, John Calipari was talking just a minute ago about that he watches and learns from you. I was just curious as to what you might think he watches and what he learns by watching you.
Well, John and I come from the, we started, we came out, we're in the same era. You go back, we've known each other a long time, and I do think we believe the game should be played pretty much the same way. And that's a compliment, but I learned from him too, and I think we all as coaches learn from coaches, and you learn some things. But he and I, in some ways, are, I think we see the game the same way and what we want from our teams. And he is different. He's in a totally different situation than I'm in here.
So basically, we both see the game very differently. Now, when Rick says that they're in a different situation from one another, he went on to say, yeah, look, John's got a young team. Like he said, it's the youngest team that I've even ever coached. Rick's got returning guys, right? Like, only Robert Hubbs, essentially, as far as the big-time players for Rick Barnes, isn't back. Everybody else on that roster is a guy that's been there a season or two already. So he's got a pretty seasoned team. And that matters in college basketball. The gap between the guy with a year more experience and the guy that doesn't have it matters. And we can see this from the last time that Tennessee and Kentucky played each other. Tennessee went into halftime with an 8-point deficit, and they ended up outscoring Kentucky in the second half of the game, 47-28. Right? I think Grant Williams had something like 20 points, and Admiral Schofield had 20, and then Grant Williams had 18 or something like that. Like, it was a game where you had to rely on the guys with a little bit more experience, and Rick Barnes has got his team exactly where he wants them. This is not just a team that's going to be making an SEC title run. This is a team that when they get into the NCAA tournament, they can be absolutely dangerous. Absolutely dangerous. When asked, how much of Rick Barnes' DNA does this team have? This is what John Calipari responded with.
And with the efficiency on both ends of the floor with this team, is this kind of how much DNA of Rick Barnes does this team have on it?
There, you just see it. It just takes time, and it's they grind it as well as anybody. What's the difference right now is they're making threes, so they can create that 10, 12-point gap, and they grind it on defense and offense well enough. It's hard when you get down 10 or 12 to come back and get something from him. And so, he's, like I said, I told the staff today, they're playing exactly how that team has to play to have this kind of success, which is what I would expect from Rick.
It's hard when you get down 10 or 12 points to get something back from him. Wow. Because it is crazy, right? That team, I'm talking about the Tennessee Vols, when they start making threes, good night. Good night. Because they lock you down. They absolutely lock you down. Rick Barnes wants his guys playing defense. It's what he's always wanted. It's what he always preaches. Now, every coach will tell you they want their team playing defense, but some coaches really stress it more than others. Rick Barnes could care less whether or not his team was knocking down threes, right? Because he understands it. He believes sometimes the three ball's not there. Sometimes it's not there for you. This is how much defense is important to Rick Barnes.
And you guys obviously have had some success away from home. Is that just getting back to the focus on defense first and rebounding as much as you can?
Yeah, I do think that the one thing that's consistent, we know, like the other night, we shot the ball ridiculously, and you have those games once in a blue moon, but we know that the defense is what you have to do, and building solid habits that can withstand emotion and all that. I mean, we just want to have great habits, and that's what while we keep harping on every day, can we continue the process and continue to look at who we are and what we have to do to improve. And that's not just as a team, but as individuals too. And that's what we try to do.
Even Barnes acknowledges that the other day they shot the ball ridiculously. Like I said, they pounded Ole Miss into powder, 94-61. Have mercy. And I don't think that we're going to see a lot of games where this team is missing when they're running, when they're open, when they're sharing the ball, when they're passing the ball in the open court. That's what an ideal Rick Barnes team looks like. And quite frankly, I actually think that Tennessee is a better place for Rick Barnes than Texas was, because it's not a secret. And John Calipari even said it in the SEC teleconference. Hey, Rick Barnes has feasted on the basketball talent in the Washington, D.C. area. This is a guy that was able to get Kevin Durant to leave D.C. and come to Texas. Now you're so much closer to there. His recruiting job just got easier by coming further east. Tennessee isn't just a good job for him. It's a great job, and he's been great. And 3 years in, and he's already got this program on schedule. And Philip Fulmer, by the way, is absolutely thrilled with the way that Rick Barnes has been coaching and has been doing things. So, I mean, Philip Fulmer and Rick Barnes being on the same page, this means that Rick Barnes may find himself extended, right? He may be in Tennessee for the long haul, and that can only be good for the Vols, because in terms of basketball, this is the time to find the coach that's peaking. And Rick Barnes is peaking, right? When you look around the league and you look at how good Florida has been, and when you look around the league and you look at how good Auburn has been, and the fact that Kentucky is always dangerous, and that Texas A&M is starting to look like a force now that they've got guys returning from suspensions and injuries, this is not a league to be messed with. You better have your coach peaking at the right time. And Rick Barnes has got the Tennessee Volunteers peaking at the right moment, because he's got them playing a little bit of team ball.
We've always talked about trying to really have balance within our offense. And, 2 years in a row now, when 2 years ago, we lost Kevin Punter at the end of the year, and he had meant so much to us. And a year ago, Robert Hubbs went down, and we really sort of fell apart. And but we've tried to build a team that we don't have to rely on just one guy. And it's great when all of them are doing their job, and you certainly have roles, and our team knows how we want to play. I do think they understand the identity we're trying to create as a team. And
so that's that. They're trying to create an identity. They're trying to show what it is that they have, because you need an identity. You need something that you do well. Sure, you could do a lot of things good, but if you don't do anything great, you're not going to make it far in the NCAA tournament. Yes, you need matchups to go your way. It's a single elimination tournament. If you roll up on a team that's a bad matchup for you, they're going to bounce you. But the fact that the identity of this team is defense. Defense is the one thing that if you're going to excel at something, I prefer it to be that. I strongly, strongly prefer it to be that. What does John Calipari have to do to give the Wildcats a chance against the Tennessee Volunteers tonight?
We had to make some adjustments in how we were going to play, what was going to be successful. But that's on me to do, which I'm trying to do. The other part of it is you got to play. You got to compete. You can't act like, one play doesn't matter. They all matter. So it's all the stuff that we go through every year we're going through right now. The issue is we're going to be playing an efficient team on both ends who are physically tough and will fight you. And it's kind of like playing West Virginia again. All right, what are you going to do? They're going to come at you. You're going to go at them. It's going to be a hard game for us.
It's going to be a hard game for us. And so that game already underway, and we'll keep you updated with how it is that the Vols are doing against Kentucky tonight. Shifting gears here over to college football, because I told you, football never stops. Clutch with Keon Rose on all new Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. Football never sleeps. And so we are trying to figure out when the spring games are for every university. Every university has announced, in the SEC anyway, has announced when their spring games are going to be, except for Vanderbilt, who did not announce their spring game last year and did not televise their spring game either. So we're not going to worry about Vanderbilt at the moment. If we get any news on Vandy, we'll figure it out. But currently, this is how the schedule shakes out. March 31st, South Carolina is going to have their spring game at noon on the SEC network. April 7th, Ole Miss is going to have theirs at 2 p.m. on ESPNU. Also on April 7th is going to be Sam Jordan's Arkansas Razorbacks. Also at 2, they're going to be on the SEC network. Auburn is going to be playing April 7th as well, 4 p.m. after Arkansas on the SEC network. Kentucky, 6:30 p.m. on April 13th on the SEC network. Missouri at 1 p.m., SEC network. April 14th, Florida, Texas A&M. They're all going to be on the 14th as well. Florida's playing at 3. Texas A&M is playing at 5. All of them on the SEC network. Tennessee is going to be playing April 21st at 2 p.m. on the SEC network. Alabama is going to be playing that same day at 2 on ESPN. Mississippi State that same day at 4 on the SEC network. And Georgia that same day at 4 on ESPN. And LSU is going to be playing April 21st as well, 6 p.m. SEC network. And there's a number of storylines that I am looking forward to for the spring games, because we always keep it spicy in the SEC. There's a lot of things going on in this league at any one time. In the offseason, they don't care. We're going to level you with storylines. And one is LSU, their offense. Do they have one? Because last year they were up and down. They were inconsistent. Sometimes they'd play for a whole game. Sometimes they'd give you half a game. Sometimes offensively, they couldn't find the range at all. And so I don't know what to tell you with LSU concerning their offense. Have they found it? Do they have a situation where they've worked out what their quarterback is? Because no one has had more quarterback woes than LSU, except for maybe Florida, but at least we've seen a good Florida quarterback in our lives. The last time we saw a good LSU quarterback was Jamarcus Russell, and our memory of that is very much shaded by his experience in the NFL. Georgia, offensive continuity. Do they have it? You lose Nick Chubb. You lose Sony Michel. You do not get better off of that. I'm sorry. I don't care who you replace those guys with, but Kirby Smart is the guy that's bringing in the #1 recruiting class. National Signing Day is tomorrow, and barring some massive change in recruits, right? Like just a bunch of guys flip that have committed to Georgia. Essentially, Georgia's going to have the #1 recruiting class. So what does this mean for Georgia's offensive continuity? I'm not really worried about Georgia's defense.
Particularly angry. In fact, it makes me taste copper in my mouth, and that happens.
I'm not really worried about Georgia on the defensive side of the ball, right? They're going to do what they do. They've been good on defense since Kirby's been there. But the offense, yeah, Mark Richt recruited those guys. So we're going to have to figure out, can Georgia continue offensively? The new coaches. My question for Florida, Tennessee, Texas A&M, all of those spring games on April 21st across various networks. The new coaches. Dan Mullen for Florida, Jeremy Pruitt for Tennessee, Jimbo Fisher for Texas A&M. Can the new coaches show us something new with all of these teams? Any new wrinkles, any new twists? Or is it going to be more of the same? I understand you can't expect a guy to change anything. Rome was not built in a day, but we might see some differences in philosophy. We might see some differences in tempo, and I want to know what those things are. I'm very curious. And of course, Alabama has the most delicious of all storylines of the spring games. Jalen Hurts versus Tua Tagovailoa. Who's the quarterback going to be? That's going to be us talking about that all off season. Be prepared for it. You're going to be tired of it by June, and we're still going to be talking about it. And the reason why is you've got a guy that's won a bunch of games. You got another guy who stepped in, and had he not stepped in, Alabama would not be national champions once again. So which is it? Are you going to take the guy that's got the veteran skills? Or are you going to take the guy that's probably more suited to what your offense really looks like as of late? Only time will tell. You're listening to all new Nooga Radio and NoogaRadio.com, 92.7 FM, Clutch with Keon Rose. Next.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4, 92.7 FM's news now.
A Sequatchie County School Board member has charges dismissed. A Hamilton County judge on Monday dismissed charges against former school board chairman Charles Rollins, who was charged with assault. Police say he got into an argument with a cashier at Staples in December over price matching. Clerk told officers he threatened to shoot her, but the judge threw out the charge and expunged the record. Rollins said the accusation was made up by the clerk. The so-called Freedom Fighter bandit was arrested outside of Nashville. The bandit was wanted for several bank robberies in Georgia. The FBI said Nilsa Urena was called the Freedom Fighter bandit because she was captured on video during a robbery, posing like a commie straight out of the Cold War era with a raised closed fist. The FBI said she robbed banks for a cause. The Sean Hannity Show, weekdays from 3 to 6 on Nooga Radio. Val St. John, Nooga Radio, News Talk 92.7, News Now.
Chattanooga Morning News with Russ and Val. Weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. on Nooga Radio, 92.7 FM.
Oh, man, rush. I've got to get stuff for the party. Where can I go that's going to give me a wide selection of beer, wines, and spirits? Oh, I've got it. I'll go to Harry's Wine and Spirits, Signal Mountain. Maybe East Brainerd Wine and Spirits in East Brainerd. I could go to Riley's Wines and Spirits in Hickson. Wow, look at the huge selection in here. Look at these great prices. Amazing. Oh, yeah, I'm going to find something for my lady, too. I'm going to make this party a success.
Make your party a success when you stop in at Harry's Wine and Spirits in Signal Mountain, East Brainerd Wine and Spirits in East Brainerd, and Riley's Wine and Spirits in Hickson. An automated nuclear missile defense system has suddenly entered into launch mode, and you are the only one who can stop it. Escape Experience Chattanooga. Your team has just been infected with a deadly virus. Your only hope? There, in an abandoned farmhouse. Escape Experience Chattanooga. Handcuffed in a maximum security prison, you have an hour to flee. Escape Experience Chattanooga. These escape scenarios and more at Chattanooga's best escape room game and team building platform. Call now. Slots are limited. Register online at escapeexperience.com/Chattanooga. Escape Experience Chattanooga. If your computer is running slow, if you have viruses, if someone called you asking to get into your computer, just say no. If a screen pops up on your computer saying your data is going to be deleted and you have to call this number, don't call it. You need to call Affordable Computers. You wouldn't invite a stranger to come into your house to look at all your books and records, so why would you invite someone to look at your records on your computer? With one wrong click of the mouse, you could be allowing access into your entire system. At Affordable Computers, we can stop them now. Don't be fooled by scammers and pop-ups that tell you must call this number or your hard drive is going to be deleted. You need to call Affordable Computers. Call Affordable Computers now. Microsoft is never going to call you. Microsoft is never going to ask you to call them. If you see that on your screen, you are being scammed. Stop and call Affordable Computers. 423-499-1975. That's 423-499-1975. In Fort Oglethorpe, call 706-858-5888. That's 706-858-5888. Affordable Computers.
95.3 HD4, 92.7 FM.
Expect fair to partly cloudy skies to continue through your nighttime. Cold overnight, lows mid and upper 20s. Now for your Wednesday, look for some sunshine with a breeze out of the north, though. Light cold, highs up around 40 with more mainly dry and cold weather expected through Friday. Celebrate the new year with Dixieland Fireworks, locally owned with the largest selection around. A Black Hat dealer with the lowest prices in Dixie. Dixieland Fireworks, just off I-75 on Ringgold Road, East Ridge. And I'm Storm Team 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Hoare.
Broadcasting live to over 1 million souls in Chattanooga, the Tennessee Valley, and beyond on frequency modulation 92.7. Sean Hannity, 25,000 watts on digital FM 95.3 HD4. CBS Radio News. NASCAR, Bloomberg Markets, David Tulis, streaming strong at Noogaradio.com. Live on YouTube and Facebook. Nooga Radio, News Talk 92.7. Chattanooga Radio.
So I gave you all of my opinions on Tennessee and Kentucky playing today. They're in the second half. Game is as tough as I thought it would be. 48-46 currently, Tennessee over Kentucky with 6 minutes and 50 seconds to go in the half. And yeah, we have some breaking news. Josh McDaniels, we thought he was going to go to the Colts. It was announced a few hours ago that Josh McDaniels going to the Colts. Yeah, not anymore. Josh McDaniels reneges on his commitment because he didn't sign anything, didn't sign any documentation. And so Josh McDaniels will return to the New England Patriots as offensive coordinator, which is stunning because Josh McDaniels is a guy that's very highly sought after. I imagine the Colts would have paid him well, and that's a good job. If Andrew Luck is right, and that's hard to tell, right? Like that leaves a lot to be seen. But if Andrew Luck is right, that's a good job. It is. And so I don't know if he just wasn't sure about how Luck was going to be. I don't know if Josh McDaniels would rather have his success as an offensive coordinator than be a head coach and struggle for a little bit, because, I mean, that's also a thing too. And actually, the coach that I didn't suspect would be leaving, Matt Patricia, the defensive coordinator, he's going to be the head coach of the Detroit Lions. What's that going to mean for them? Right. I don't know. I would have thought, given that Detroit's had their offensive struggles, that they would have gone with more of an offensive guy. But to get Matt Patricia, that's a steal. And yes, part of Detroit's problem is that they don't defend anybody, right? Now, you're Matt Patricia and you go to Detroit. What do you escape? You escape all of that conversation about what it is that the Patriots were thinking when they didn't play Malcolm Butler in the Super Bowl. You get to be a little bit removed from that because, hey, man, you're the coach of a new football team. I'm the head coach of the Detroit Lions. Okay, fair enough. We're going to go ahead and leave you alone with that one. We're going to go ahead and leave you alone. I can't believe McDaniels didn't take the Colts job. McDaniels is a guy that I thought when he was in Denver, I didn't think that he did a bad job, but a lot of his struggles was that he never had a quarterback, right? That his best option was legitimately Tim Tebow. And yeah, Tim Tebow went on that run, and Tim Tebow gets a lot of credit for going on that run, but I give a lot of credit to Josh McDaniels for recognizing Tim Tebow's limitations and trying to play within that. And I'm telling you, there are a lot of limitations. So the fact that Tim Tebow doesn't really read a defense particularly fast or well, or at least not when he was playing, to the fact that he's got the slowest windup we've seen since Warren Moon, but without any of the arm strength of Warren Moon, without any of the throwing velocity of Warren Moon. He's mobile, but you know, that doesn't help you if the game ever reaches beyond 21 points. If it gets to be anything remotely involving a high-scoring affair, no help. Tim Tebow's no help to you. That game has to be close. And I thought that Josh McDaniels, given the limitations of Tim Tebow as a quarterback, did a pretty solid job. Made the playoffs and won a playoff game with a guy that never made another NFL roster as a quarterback really ever again. I think he had that one season in Philly where he was a backup, but he didn't make it past the preseason. And then he played special teams with the Patriots. Yeah. No, I guess he had that one run with the Jets there. But I also don't believe he made it out of the preseason of that season either. So the fact still remains. Tim Tebow. That's the best that Josh McDaniels had to work with the last time he was a head coach. And I thought, well, yeah, there's no way that he doesn't jump at the opportunity to coach Andrew Luck. But okay, Josh McDaniels, still the offensive coordinator of the New England Patriots, the Indianapolis Colts, of which there are actually a few Colts fans in this area. You still don't have a head coach. And we're coming up on the NFL draft combine. And that means we're right around the corner from the NFL draft. And you still don't have a coach. Not good. Not good. You need to get that sorted. The Colts thought they had a guy. So let's jump over to college football really quick. Another quarterback conversation, because Jacob Eason officially today transferred to the University of Washington, which is home for him, actually. He is from Washington. Now, Jacob Eason, when he signed with Georgia, was expected to be a guy that could give the offense a boost. And year one, I thought he did pretty well, right? For a team that was struggling on a number of points. And by the way, the number of games that Georgia was down in that they asked Jacob Eason to be the comeback king for was a lot. And he was able to make some of those comebacks work. Some of them did fall flat. He showed flaws. He showed weaknesses in a way that I think that Kirby Smart did a really good job of protecting Jake Fromm the next year. He didn't throw Jake Fromm into all the situations that Jacob Eason got thrown into, right? And Jacob Eason starts this past season as the starter for Georgia, gets injured in the first quarter of the first game. By the time he comes back from rehab, Jake Fromm is playing so well, the job's not his anymore. So now he's transferring to Washington, which is made official today. He officially actually transferred, even though he pretty much was gone before, right? Like, this was actually reported a few weeks ago that Jacob Eason was going to be transferring to Washington. And this is a move, by the way, that totally makes sense if you're Jacob Eason. It's home. It's where you're from. Washington's a good school, right? With a good coach. This is a good move for you. You can win. You're in a big-time conference, still playing big-time ball. Yes, Jacob Eason has to sit out a year because of the NCAA rules, but this move makes sense. He's not getting that job back from Fromm unless Fromm gets injured. And Fromm did show some durability last year. Like, Eason's not taking that job back. He's a backup if he stays at Georgia, so he's got to go. And honestly, I don't think this hurts Georgia either, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. Having Eason would be nice because he gives you a level of stability. He gives you the depth that you need in the event of an injury, which you did have last year, right? Jacob Eason gets injured. Jake Fromm takes over. Georgia doesn't miss a beat. You needed that last year. And we've even seen it in the Super Bowl, right? To have two quarterbacks on your roster that can go at any given moment is nice. If you lose Carson Wentz, to know that Nick Foles can step up and lead you to a Super Bowl, that's a luxury that most teams don't have at any level of this game. That's not an NFL problem. That's a football problem. Quarterback is a hard position to play. So yeah, Jacob Eason should hurt you there, except Georgia went ahead and they signed Justin Fields, another 5-star recruit. This is their third 5-star quarterback that they've signed in a row. Should something happen to Jake Fromm, God forbid, should something happen to Jake Fromm, he is absolutely, without the shadow of a doubt, being backed up by a 5-star recruit who might steal his job, which has happened at Georgia for 3 years now. So there's almost no reason to believe that it wouldn't happen again. Jake Fromm better stay healthy because the freshman might take his job and he might never give it back. So you're Georgia, you still have depth. And if you're Jacob Eason, you get to go to a school where you've got the potential to start, right? And I like Jacob Eason a lot. And I said I thought Jacob Eason could have made the leap last year into being an elite level quarterback because Jake Fromm wasn't an elite level quarterback for most of the year last year. And not because he can't be. because nobody ever asked him to be, because he didn't have to. If you don't have to be an elite level quarterback, you don't have to be an elite level quarterback. That's just the end of the story. Right? So I don't really see Jake Fromm as being what I thought Jacob Eason could have been until roughly the second half of the season. And when Georgia lost to Auburn, I thought that's when they started to put more on Jake Fromm's shoulders, because up until that point, you were just getting killed by Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, right? Now, Fromm, when he was asked to throw in those limited throwing games that he did, he was accurate, he was on target, he was in rhythm, and he was Johnny on the spot. Like, I give all the credit in the world to Jake Fromm, but no one asked him to be a world beater until after the Auburn loss, when they needed to add another dimension to their game. And to his eternal credit, he stepped up and he was ready to go. But if you're Georgia, I mean, you're not really worried about losing Jacob Eason here. And for those people who believe this is the epidemic of college football, guys just transfer all the time, this is what happens when you allow your sport to be the minor league of the NFL. That means that guys' ultimate goal and their ultimate incentive is to make it to the NFL. If you don't want guys transferring like it's some kind of plague, here's what you need to do. Tell the NFL to step off and get their own minor league. And that you're not their minor league, but college football is more than happy to do that. And so, yeah, you lose your job in college football, you transfer. And it works out well for a lot of guys. You're listening to all new Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com. Clutch with Keon Rose. We're gonna get it to the point now. By the way, I have a story about the Philly special play, which we all know the Philly special play. It's the trick play that the Eagles ran on the goal line in the Super Bowl. Nick Foles suggested the play to Doug Peterson, right? That you can. There's a video released by Inside the NFL that runs on Showtime, and you can watch Foles tell Peterson, "Run Philly, Philly, Philly," and then Peterson pauses for a second before responding with, "Yeah, let's do it, let's do it." And then Foles proceeded to call the Philly special in the huddle. That is the coolest thing that has ever happened. So basically, Nick Foles, in the heat of the moment, convinced Doug Peterson to run that play. I'm all the more convinced that Doug Peterson has got nerves of steel, because there's no way is there any other coach in the league that lets their backup quarterback in the Super Bowl in a big moment with a play you absolutely have to have. Is there any other coach that does that? I don't know. Maybe Andy Reid, because Andy Reid is such a player's guy. Maybe John Harbaugh, because again, he's another one of those players' guys. That's a list of 3 people. I don't think anybody else does that. To be completely honest with you, I don't really think anybody does that. Really, do you? Because I don't. I am more than convinced that ain't how this is going down. So you've got a number of games going on in the SEC tonight, by the way, and this week especially. You've got South Carolina and Arkansas also playing tonight. You've got Alabama and Mississippi State. You've got Missouri and Ole Miss. All of these games kind of matter, because I have the feeling, and I think that I'm right about this, but I have the feeling that we're going to have an NCAA tournament that's loaded with SEC teams, because they're all good. And the Big 12 is also great, but I look around at these other leagues outside of Duke, I'm not really impressed by the ACC. Not really impressed by the Big 10. I think Virginia's doing really well in the ACC as well. Not really impressed by the Big 10. Right? Like this looks like a down year. This looks like one of those Tom Izzo down years for Michigan State. Looks like a Wisconsin down year as well. I'm just not impressed by the Big Ten, and the Pac-12 looks like they're also having a down year as well. Like we're looking at a year where I think that the SEC could really dominate every part of the bracket. The SEC and the Big 12, to be honest with you. I got a lot of teams in the South. The basketball's returning to the South, man. By the way, number 15, Tennessee versus number 24, Kentucky. We talked about them in the first half of the show. Tied at 50 apiece with 3.5 minutes left to go in the ball game. This is a big one. Winner of this game gets second place in the SEC. The Vols are 17-5, 7-3 in conference. Kentucky is 17-6, 6-4 in conference. So this would tie them. And the winner of this game, I actually believe, would also have the tiebreaker over the other. Well, if Kentucky wins, they have the tiebreaker over Tennessee, and they would be second in the SEC. If Tennessee were to win, then they would outright have a better record than Kentucky, and they would be second in the SEC. John Calipari is impressed with the Vols. They look like the team he wishes his team looked like. And the reason why his team does not look like the Vols is because they are so young. They are so incredibly young. This is what Coach Cal had to say about it.
Before Missouri, I said, do me a favor, play for your teammates. I want you to think about how can I make this game easier for my teammates? And it's hard for them right now. So we got to force some things to get them to play with each other. And I'm trying to bring it along, but it's a different process because this is the youngest team that I've even ever coached. And it's become that challenge. But look, this team is capable of doing it. I believe in this team. It's just I got to do a better job, and then they got to fight more. So it's a combination of both.
This is the youngest team that I've even ever coached. That's like the last person you want to hear saying something like that. Right? I mean, that's like the last person you want to hear saying anything like that. That is insanity. This is the youngest team that I've even ever coached. And now Tennessee and Kentucky are duking it out on ESPN right now to see who it is that's going to be second place in the SEC in an SEC that looks like it's loaded. I don't know if I've ever seen the SEC look this loaded. You're listening to Clutch with Keon Rose on all new Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. So there's a story that kind of disturbed me a little bit. Kind of. Right? Edwin Jackson, a linebacker for the Indianapolis Colts, was killed in a car crash. And the car crash, the perpetrator of the car crash is allegedly an illegal immigrant, right? And so, of course, Donald Trump has taken this to be his sounding board as to the reason why, essentially, we should step up our defense in immigration. We should step up our immigration reform. And look, I don't know if there's necessarily. I'm not going to disagree with your politics on this, right? Like if you think that we need to be tougher in immigration or not, that to me is not the issue. I think that the issue here is that it's kind of sick to use a guy that just died to try and push this agenda through. Like that guy lost his life. I don't know if has it even been 24 hours since he died? Maybe give this one a little bit of room, right? And it's the same thing, by the way, whenever we have a school shooting or we have a mass shooting, this is the thing that a lot of people get mad, especially at politician Democrats, for attempting to use that for gun reform. And it does come across as being a little sick, right? Because people just died and you're using this to push forward an agenda. Sure, I understand where you're coming from. An agenda that you think will save people, but you're still using it to push across an agenda. Maybe give us a little bit of room from this first, right? And it's so weird because I've seen conservatives jump on Democrats for years about this. And then the president does it, and I don't hear anything. And that to me is particularly sick. And it is particularly sick on a second level, which is like Donald Trump went after NFL players. And it's like, I don't care about your rights before you're dead, but once you're dead, I can use you to push across an agenda. That seems very sick to me. I'm not a fan of how he went about doing that, and I think that that's incredibly problematic. I don't necessarily like it. It comes across as disrespectful because guess what? It is disrespectful. A guy just died. Maybe give his family some space and some time to grieve first before you use him to push across an agenda, or maybe even ask them if it's okay, which I know he didn't. You're listening to all new Nooga Radio and NoogaRadio.com. Clutch with Keon Rose, 92.7 FM. Remember, folks, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Stay clutch, and I'll see you in 24 hours.
Truex Jr. is off the pace, and he is headed to the pit lane. Elliott Cowherd around the outside. Michael McDowell pops the right front.